printer. People are printing their little handouts. Excellent. Most excellent. Okay. Let me change my view here and start our recording here momentarily. So one moment. And let's see. I'm seeing LGFG Fashion House. That's strange. All right. Let me go to this multiplicity view. There we go.
Lee, I'm recording already.
Oh, Mamik, you are?
Yeah.
Good. Well, greetings to Mamik. Greetings to everybody. I've already said hello once. I shan't do it again. We were listening to the Rolling Stones a moment ago with the song called Time Is On My Side. And that came out when I was a young child. But the reason I'm playing it is because we're going to talk about time today. So it was appropriate. It was not just a frivolous song. Today, if you have your handouts ready, we're going to jump in and discuss more Covey material, because I've kind of gotten into Covey recently since we started to teach that. It's so good. We just can't gloss over it. So if you have your sheet called Becoming a Quadrant 2 Self-Manager with my favorite symbol of the compass, pull that out and let's look at it. We've been discussing how we can maximize our effectiveness. And last week we talked about the 4 time quadrants. If you recall, we had quadrant 1, which is urgent stuff. Oh, the house is on fire. So many pressing problems. They're important. And most people in business spend 90% of their time in quadrant 1, in crisis mode, putting out fires, dealing with stuff all the time. Quadrant 2 is, well, that's the quadrant 1 is the quadrant of demand. Quadrant 2 is the zone. This is where you want to try to develop some time into your schedule. And we're going to talk about that today. How to spend time, how to organize your calendar around quadrant 2. Those things that are important, but not urgent. The ones we always put off. So there are 4 key activities on your sheet there that I want to talk about today, mostly 3. So this will be easy. 4 key activities for you to develop into a 7 Habits self-manager, right? First, number 1, we've got to identify our roles. Roles. Our Australia friends thought I meant R-O-L-L-S because they were having this meeting at breakfast time. Role, no. These are different types of roles. These are roles you play in your life, not roles you eat. Okay, so just there's a distinction. So 1, we're going to identify our roles. 2, we're going to set goals for those roles. 3, we're going to then schedule them into our calendar. And are we doing our each day individually like a silo? Or like do you have a to-do list for the day? Some of you do. I would encourage you to turn it into a week-long process. You ought to be looking at your whole week as you begin each week, right? Because Covey's all about week-long chunks. Right, now, we've got lots of people who spend, as I said, lots of time in quadrant 1. And they jump from task to task, and their phone rings, and they answer it, and an email pops up, and they see a notification. They go, oh, I've got to take care of that. So they spend their whole day, really, sometimes that's quadrant 3. You're doing other people's requests. So that's not really that important, but it seems urgent, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I want you to write down some of your roles that you play in your life, okay? Here are some roles I jotted down that you might think about. Number 1, all the booking buddies are going to write down booking buddy, or you would say employee, which really sounds boring and corporate, but you can write that down. That's one of your roles for booking buddies. So some of you in other offices, you might write down clothier, because that's a role you play, okay? So think through all the roles of your life and jot them down, okay? Some of you might be partners already. All of you, if you're in an office with more than one person, you would be team members, like an office mate, right? So that's a role you might play, how to get along with other people. That's an important aspect of LGFG. Some of you might jot down being a family member. Some of you are parents, you've got kids. Yes, it's true. Make a note of that. If you're unaware and yes, your parents. So that is a very important role. Some of you have partners, you have a husband or you have a wife. And so that is a role you play. Some of you are involved in your community. So all those are different roles. Let me read some of the roles I played in my previous life. I wrote some down. This is when I was director of marketing and leadership at Southwestern. I wrote down I'm manager of marketing, which it essentially meant project manager. That was one. Another role I had was head trainer. So I was responsible for all the training, and that involved different goals. I wrote down corporate anarchist, which is kind of funny and interesting. That just meant I wasn't really trying to blow up the company, but I was involved with change. So that was change agent. I considered that a role is to take an old 160-year-old company and try to make it new. Here's another role I jotted down: father and husband. That's important. And then I wrote down son because my parents were alive at that point. My mom still is. And then finally I wrote down, as I pulled out some of my old Cubby material, one of my roles was United Way chairman. So that's more community oriented. Okay? So each of you ought to have at least, gosh, I would think if you're a semi-complex person, you ought to have 3 or 4 roles in your life. Okay? Everybody got some of those down? And some of you have, big dreams, like you want to open your own office in your own country. And so you might jot down future role would be a global marketer, I don't know. Or if you're serious, I thought about if you're in some kind of competition as an athlete, some of you are thinking about doing a marathon at some point. One of your roles might be athlete. So you would jot that down. So I really want you to think about your roles. I know Tonu, when I speak to him, one thing he keeps me updated on is the fact that he is helping to produce a film in Estonia, which is a big deal to him. That's a big part of his life outside of LGFG. So that would be one of his roles, is film producer. So that's I like that, involved with the big screen. All right. So number 1, we've identified some of our roles. Hopefully you've jotted those down. The second thing that we want to do then is, after you've defined your life roles, you want to think ahead and look at your weekly goals. Okay, you want to look at your weekly goals within each of those roles. So if you have that other sheet handy, this one that's got the little ovals on it, you can what you can do is write your roles in each of these little circles or ovals. And then next to them, see, I found this template online because I couldn't find a good Covey one. So somebody needs to rework this whole handout I sent you, but instead of activities, I would write goals. And so you assign goals for each of those roles. Make sense? Even though this says activities. So within each role, you want to think of 1 or 2 important results that you would like to attain that week, right? So it might be a certain number of qualified bookings. It might be a certain amount of, if you're in turf and you're selling as a clothier, it might be a certain amount of business that you generate when you're actually having sales meetings. But you jot down goals for each of those roles, right? Now, you can look ahead a week with your goals and roles in mind, and then you can schedule them in. So what I would do then is take this little column. Here, you got roles, you got goals, and then I would put them into your week ahead. See right here? How fun is that? So you start having blocks of time already built into your schedule. And some of you have, like Booking Buddies, you have pretty much a block of time during your whole work schedule during the day, which is making those calls and hitting those goals. Well, when you're not at work, you're going to have some of your other roles kick in, right? So you want to block those in. And what you find, some people say, well, gosh, if you block out most, if not all of your week, isn't that really restricting? No, it's actually freeing, because you don't have to think, okay, what's the next thing I should do? Or what should I be working on now? And oh yeah, I forgot to do this. It's already pretty much built in, okay? So the 4th thing, you see up above, it says number 4, daily adapting. That's simply being flexible. So if you're cruising along, and then the person that you report to, or maybe Dimitri calls, you're going to have to, you don't want to say, sorry, locked in on my schedule, can't talk. You need to adapt to what's going on, all right? So always maintain some flexibility. Now, I have given you this sheet, and I would love for someone, maybe tease somebody, to turn this into a spreadsheet. And you can use this very sheet. It works, but it just has some weird terminology on there that I don't like. It has something here in the middle called hard landscape, which, whatever. I don't know who designed this, but it was close. Down here at the bottom, I really like this part, because at the end of the week, you want to take a few minutes and reflect on your week. How many of you take a few minutes to think back about the week you just had? Does anybody? Raise your hand. A couple of you. Good. That is a very John Maxwellian thing to do, taking a few minutes to think about the week you just had. And what Covey would suggest is that you think and look at your schedule, how it actually turned out, and see how many hours or what % of your time was quadrant 1 when you were just putting out fires, so to speak. What % was quadrant 2, which is highlighted there. That's where you want to spend time planning, preparing, thinking, rejuvenating yourself so that you can maintain that production capability. You remember when we talked about Covey, there was productivity, production, and then there was production capability. This quadrant 2, if you can build in some time to think, to plan, to vision cast, to reflect, to work out, to sharpen the saw, that is all quadrant 2, and that will help you maintain your production capability. Yeah? Does that make sense? Nod your head if that makes sense. Okay, now, I also included there on your sheet, I'm encouraging you to get some kind of a planner. So when I talk to people on the phone, they just say, well, I say, well, how do you keep track of what you're doing? And they say, well, I just put stuff in my phone, which essentially means I just have a to-do list sitting in my phone, and then I can check it off. But that really is just one day at a time. It doesn't look at the week. You're not thinking about quadrant 2. You're not thinking about sharpening the saw. You're not thinking of all the good Covey stuff that we covered. You're going back to it's like the 1980s when they came out with Post-it notes, and you would just put Post-it notes everywhere. Oh, I've got a Post-it note. This will remind me. This will remind me. And then you're just covered up by notes. So the phone is fine, but I want you to find either a planner of some kind that you can use and write in, because some of you like to write things down on paper. And some of you, if you prefer the digital, I put there a little website of a digital planner I used a few years back, which is really good. It is from Covey. It's called Plan Plus Online, all one word, Plan Plus Online. And there's a little YouTube video. Now, if you're looking at your piece of paper and you're trying to click on that link, it won't work. You have to, yeah. All right, fine. You guys know that. But anyway, that link takes you to a YouTube video that kind of explains Plan Plus and how to use it. But look up Plan Plus online, because what it does is it takes your Google Calendar, or if you use Outlook, I use Microsoft Outlook, it integrates Outlook into the 7 Habits planning calendar system like we're talking about. And you don't just get a calendar, and you don't just get a to-do list, which is old systems. You get a way to think about your mission and all that kind of stuff, which is what is below. If you look on your sheet, keep going down the list. See where it says mission statement. How many of you started to craft a mission statement when we were together in Manila last year? Anybody? No. Okay. Then I would have you think about, what is my mission? Okay. Why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I headed? Especially at work. So you can always think bigger than what I've talked about today. Look at your mission statement. That will impact your roles, and then your roles impact your goals. See the arrows there? That's how you use the Covey system. And then what we've discussed today is just below that, how I can organize my week. I think about each of my roles, and that generates one or two goals for each of those roles, and that maintains my balance, right? And then that helps me think, okay, what's my plan to hit my goals? And then you can all integrate that into your calendar that you've got. And again, I gave you this sheet that I would love you to revise. Some of you can put that in an Excel spreadsheet and maybe share that with everybody. Make it look pretty, okay? So roles to goals to plans to calendar. Because most of the people that I've talked to have goals. Most of the people I talk to do not have roles delineated. Most of the people I talk to, when I say, okay, what's your plan to hit the goals? They're like, I don't know, work hard, the grind. That's always the answer. Let's grind. Okay, I agree. But you got to have a plan to hit the goals, right? That's key. And then you can put it on your calendar. So this is way more effective than just how most of the people in the business world just keep a daily to-do list, and they just run around and live in quadrant one, and their life is way hectic, and their partner or their wife yells at them when they get home. They're like, you forgot to see the kids' sports today. And it gets really messy and unbalanced. So then they say, well, I'm going to take 2 weeks off of work, and they try to get the home front fixed, and that doesn't work because it takes time to do that. So I'm just going to super encourage you to think about roles and goals, okay, and make that part of your weekly planning. Last thing. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Does anybody have thoughts or questions? Has anyone used this effectively that you could speak to that? The Covey time management system. Anybody? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, here's the deal. Like we talked about, the big questions that I asked last week are this. I want you to think about this. What is one thing you could do that you're not doing now that if you did it on a regular basis would totally impact your personal life? What one thing, if you could change it and make it a habit, would change your personal life dramatically? And secondly, what's one thing that you could do in your business life that if you adopted it and made that change would make a huge difference at LGFG in your career? The answer to those are both quadrant 2. I guarantee you, they're both in the zone. So we have to dedicate some time and implement a system that will help you spend more time in that zone, okay? And I'll close with this. Remember, you can run your day or your day can run you. And if you're getting beat up every day and coming home and dragging and you got no energy and you're like, I don't even have time to work out, I don't have time to read a good book because I'm too tired because whatever, I would strongly urge you to think, how can I spend more time thinking, planning, reviewing? I might have to take time out. A lot of people do their quadrant 2 thinking time, planning time on Sunday evenings before the week starts. Some of you maybe first thing Monday when you begin work, you might take 30 minutes to think through your whole week. But if you don't, you will run a ragged life, my friends, because I've tried it both ways. And this way is infinitely more balanced. And you become you're like a marathon runner. And each week, when you're planning and getting into the zone, the important but not urgent quadrant, that I'm running. I'm doing this with my hands. And in the marathon, that's like going to one of those water stations and just, pour it on yourself, and then you keep running. It gives you, it rejuvenates you. All right. So that's my encouragement to you. Everybody has the same number of hours in a week. What you do with those hours makes all the difference. And maintaining your ability to maintain is absolutely vital. So think about production capability, quadrant 2. That's all from me. Thanks for tuning in today. It's been fun. Enjoy the week. You guys keep up the great work. I heard last week you had your biggest week ever in sales in the history of the company. I think it was on Tuesday. So that's very like you to do that. But let's make sure it's not just a spurt, but something that we can continue to do. All right, onwards, upwards, stronger, better, faster. See ya. Have a good week.